Good Friday morning, everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for July the 19th. Today, we are reading together Psalm 88. The 88th Psalm, it has been given the title in my Bible, A Cry of Desperation. The superscription tells us that this is a song, a psalm of the sons of Korah for the choir master, according to Mahalath Leannanoth. It is a maskil of Heman, the Ezrahite. And it seems that this very well could be the same Heman that is mentioned as a leader of the Korahite guild in First Chronicles chapter 6. So this might be somebody dating a long ways back I believe David might have even appointed this man to this particular position. This psalm is one that we could classify as a pure lament. Often with the lament psalms, there is an ending or a crescendo to a great section of praise, but that just isn't the case here within this particular psalm. Many people have referred to this as the saddest psalm within the Psalter, with it not having much in the way of a ending of praise. So let me get the psalm up on the screen for us, and we'll read together on this fine Friday morning. Psalm 88. Psalm 88 in verse number 1. Psalm 88, verse number 1. Yahweh, God of my salvation, I cry out before you day and night. May my prayer reach your presence. Listen to my cry. For I have had enough troubles, and my life is near Sheol. I'm counted among those going down to the pit. I'm like a man without strength, abandoned among the dead. I'm like the slain lying in the grave, whom you no longer remember, and who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest part of the pit, in the darkest places, in the depths. Your wrath weighs heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all your waves. Selah. You have distanced my friends from me. You have made me repulsive to them. I am shut in and cannot go out. My eyes are worn out from crying. Yahweh, I cry out to you all day long. I spread out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do departed spirits rise up to praise you? Selah. Will your faithful love be declared in the grave? Your faithfulness in Abaddon? Will your wonders be known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of oblivion? But I cry to you for help, Yahweh. In the morning, my prayer meets you. Yahweh, why do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me? From my youth I have been suffering, and near death I suffer your horrors. I am desperate. Your wrath sweeps over me. Your terrors destroy me. They surround me like water all day long. They close in on me from every side. You have distanced loved ones and neighbor from me. Darkness is my only friend. Psalm number 88. Again, this is different from some other psalms of lament that we have read in the fact that it doesn't end with a transition, with a reversal in the attitude or the mindset of the psalmist, where maybe the vast majority of the psalm, it has been very dark and very dreary. There's not been much in the way of optimism. But then in the end, the psalmist will say something enough, but my trust remains in you, God, and my praise will be for you all day long. That's just not here. I mean, literally the last line in the psalm is darkness is my only friend, and I can't help but think to myself, hello darkness, my old friend. Like, that's the only thing that comes to my mind here, is that song Sound of Silence, where darkness is my only friend. Where's the praise at? Where's the faith? Where's the trust and the confidence in Yahweh? Let me tell you, this sounds like a pretty depressing psalm, doesn't it? Why would God want this piece of literature, this pure lament? Why would he want this in his Psalter? Why would he want this to be known among the people? Well, let's think about that for a few moments as we think about about this loud, painful wail. I like how one writer put this. This is a loud, painful wail of a person who is physically spent, emotionally crushed, utterly alone, and abandoned by friends. This is a person in a state that is most to be pitied. And yet, as we look at this psalm, I think there is a sign of resilient faith. As another writer says, there's 5 really good, strong signs of resilient faith here within this psalm, and it goes with the flow of the psalm. Can we just begin with verse number 1? Can we begin with verse number 1, recognizing that though this man, as we're going to see, is suffering immensely? I mean, well, let's begin with verses 3 through 5, actually. Notice the troubles that this author, Heman, is experiencing here. For I have had enough troubles. My life is near Sheol. I'm counted among those going down to the pit. I'm like a man without strength, abandoned among the dead. I'm like the slain lying in the grave, whom you no longer remember, who are cut off from your care. This is a man who has one foot in the grave. And it seems, I think it would be reasonable to understand that this man sees himself in a situation as being like those who are counted among the wicked. You know, this is supposed to be the end for the wicked. The wicked should be in this kind of depressed state, having no hope of restoration from God. That should be where the wicked are. But here we have this inspired psalmist feeling like this is his situation. But again, let's go back to the beginning now. Notice what he does. Even though his situation is described for us in 3, 4, and 5, verses 3, 4, and 5, notice that he does not remain silent, but he still continues to pray. He still looks to who? To the God of my salvation. That's still who he looks to. And he continues to cry out. He continues to pray. He knows that God gives salvation, and he knows that God is worth crying out to. Yes, there is constant trouble, but there's also constant prayer and constant crying out to God. So we see that as a sign of some resilient faith here, even though he's going through it. And I really think in this psalm, maybe more than others, I've spoken before. I've made the comment before in some of the other psalms of lament that it seems like this thing is written kind of like after the fact, where they've gone through the struggle, and then once they've come past it, they've looked back and they've recognized, they've seen God's goodness and everything. It almost seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, but it almost seems to me like this is the author still going through it. Like he's writing this in the middle of the situation. He hasn't exactly worked out his way to the end yet to reach that moment where he praises God, but he's going through it right here, right now. So this is him in real time, just pouring his heart out, giving us this really unresolved lament, this unresolved wrestling and struggling with his situation, seeing what's around him, but then he is fighting against that by his faith. You know, he sees everything that's going on, but he has faith in God. So much faith in God, in fact, that he even attributes the troubles to God. And that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But it's the reality that Yahweh is sovereign and above all things, and that nothing happens outside of either his doing or his allowance. So that's why he can say something to the extent of, you know, you have put me in the lowest part of the grave. Your wrath weighs heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me. You have distanced me. You have made me repulsive. So again, how can he say these things? Well, in doing this is almost a sign of just faith, knowing that God is in control. So I don't think I said I really identified these very well, but number one, again, the sign of resilient faith, he's not silent. He's still praying. He's still crying out. Number two, he's persistent in calling out to God to save him. Notice that back in verse 1. I cry out to you day and night. So he does the crying out, but it's not just a one-time thing. He's persistent in it. But the number three, you know, he's crediting God's sovereignty here, even in suffering. He's not looking like this as something that is outside of God's ability to handle or outside of God's control. But number four, we see this faith in him saying and expressing his belief that to live, if people want to experience God's goodness, they're not going to experience it in the grave, but they're going to experience through living. Are you going to work wonders for the dead? No, you work wonders for the living. Or is it departed spirits that praise you, or is it the living who praise you? Is your faithful love, as your Hesed declared in the grave? No, it's in the land of the living. Is your faithfulness in Abaddon? No, it's in the land of the living. Will your wonders be known in the darkness? No, in the light of life. Or your righteousness in the land of oblivion? No, in those who live. He believes that to live, in order to experience God's goodness, is to live. So if he's living, then he has the opportunity to experience God's goodness. And that's where he wants to be. He wants to be in the place where he can experience God's goodness. And his confidence is in God that he will allow that to be the case. That's why he continues to call out to Yahweh in verse 13. But I call to you for your help, Lord. In the morning, my prayer meets you. But again, here's the struggle again. Now, why do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me? Because that's really what he wants. At the end of the day, that's what he wants. Deep down, the author, he wants that relationship with God, that is all that matters. That's the fifth sign of his resilient faith. He knows that it's all about his relationship with Yahweh. That is what is most important to him. Even though it feels like from his youth he's been suffering in near death, even though he feels like he's suffering Yahweh's horrors, even though he feels like his wrath is sweeping over him and his terrors destroy him, even though this is the case, even though he feels like he's been distanced from loved ones and neighbors, and darkness again is my only friends, even though these things feel like they are his current circumstances, again, it seems like his faith is still there because he's crying out to God. And to me, the real takeaway from this is that moments like this, where someone is in the middle of the struggle, when someone is in the middle of wrestling, when they're dealing with real loss that they've experienced in life, when they're dealing with real conflict that's present in their life, when they're dealing with real temptations and struggles, whatever it is that they're wrestling with, in the middle of it, whenever the lament is still not solved, whenever it's still not been worked out, that does not mean it has to result in the loss of faith. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that we have to get to the end before we can maintain faith. No, we can maintain faith all the way through it, even whenever we express some pretty drastic thoughts here. And I'll tell you, these are pretty drastic thoughts. Would you feel comfortable? Would you feel comfortable praying what this man prays here within Psalm 88? Would you be comfortable with that? Some of us probably feel a bit uncomfortable at the very least. But it seems that this is just real wrestling. This is real life struggle. But he does all of it with the framework, with the foundation of Yahweh being the God of his salvation, with the framework of I'm going to call to you, no one else, no person I'm going to call to, no other God I'm going to call to. I'm going to call to you alone, Yahweh. You alone are worthy of me crying out to. And I'm not just going to be resigned to pity and sulking and doing nothing. I'm going to continue to cry out to you. And in that, at the very least, I think is a sign of still existent faith. So if we were to find ourselves in a moment such as this, where it feels like darkness is our only friend, feels like God is not there, he's far away from us, it feels like everything's falling apart, let me encourage you to consider Psalm 88, a man who is in very, very real desperation, and how he doesn't quit, how he doesn't give up, how he doesn't turn to anything else. He continues to cry out to Yahweh, even in the struggle, even in the wrestling, and not being able to comprehend and understand what's going on. He still turns to God. And what a great example this is for us. To know that, yes, God, Yahweh is the God of our salvation. That, yes, Yahweh is the sovereign God, that nothing happens either outside of his control or outside of his allowance. And that he's ready and waiting for us to cry out to him from the deepest hurts of our hearts. And that he will comfort us and strengthen us and sustain us all the way to the very end. And then at the end, we might be able to look back and offer a word of praise by seeing in that moment, once we're past the struggle, that God certainly was with us all along the way. If you have any questions or comments about this psalm here in Psalm 88, I invite you to please leave that in the comment section below. And I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me on this Friday. We're looking forward to seeing everybody on Sunday for our Bible studies and our worship assembly. It's third Sunday, so we're continuing to work our way through the final week of Jesus's time here on earth before the cross. And hopefully that'll be a great study for us to consider together. And we'll be back at it again on Monday, reading together. Psalm 89 is a long psalm. I'm pretty sure I have it just to read it all together at once. So we'll read that together, have a few thoughts and comments about that to give us something to meditate on as we kick our week off the right way this upcoming Monday. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everyone. Take care and God bless.